Hey everybody, welcome, welcome. This is Ask an Agent Anything. My name is Corey Ann. I am an agent and an investor, and I'm here with my beautiful friend Renee. How's it going?
I am wonderful. This is so fun, right? You got to start somewhere. And you and I decided we want to take our knowledge and contribute to the community at large. And so here we are. We're just doing it, right? We appreciate anybody who's initially just tuning in and you're along for the ride as well. So, yes, hello, everyone. Hello, Corianne. And here we go. Let's get into it. Let's get into a great conversation about some good, bad, and uglies of what's going on out there.
I love and am excited about our general topics and what we can expand and who we can talk to on Ask an Agent Anything. But I have to admit that I feel like I'm doing this because I wanted more time to talk to you. And even as a younger agent, younger, whatever, agent, only 5 years in this business, I'm still taking on new listings. I'm taking on new buyers. I'm mostly in the investment world. And just sitting down with you and going like, hey, think about this is so helpful to me too on like ethics is always coming up and how we handle our buyers and our sellers. And there's just so many different ways that I think it's storytelling that we can bring up because we're hitting it every
It's
single week.
wild. Yes. I mean, I forget, it's every transaction is different. Sometimes we forget the pain points. However, it's all an experience on this beautiful journey of life. And this is just my work equity. And so I bring my whole self, to every deal that I'm in. And it's just fun to be able to share with you. Yes, you're a little bit younger in age and experience in terms of being in real estate, but whatever, right? Like it's time is the illusion. And I just love being here with you and then also getting to share with the audience some of my tales of woe and the goodness, the craziness, everything that is this business and how I've been able to maneuver and kind of manipulate through 18 years, 18 and a half years, technically 18 and a half years in Los Angeles, which is a really challenging market. And there's lots of different micro markets within Los Angeles. So I think the country sees LA as Santa Monica or Beverly Hills or even Malibu, which is a part of LA County. And it's not just that, there's lots of other different just working folk, right here in LA. And so I've done plenty of those neighborhoods as well. So there's a lot to tell. There's extremes here. There's people that are just trying to get in, and there's folks that maybe have more money than they can spend. And I've been blessed to walk both sides of it. And so I'm here to just share my story.
I'm so glad. I want to start, hopefully, talking about a experience you had recently, because we're always going to bring to table all of our transactions, what we're dealing with. And I think like coming into real estate, especially for new agents, is not expecting quite what this roller coaster ride can look like, both emotionally with a buyer, but also just for yourself because you're expecting a check in that commission. You're putting in work for that, and sometimes it falls through, both for the agent or the investor side. So, can you start by just telling us fresh about the recent transaction and what that looked like before anything even changed?
Yeah, well, you do the best you can, and with sort of interviewing people and deciding. Here's something I think I would say for a new agent is deciding who you want to work with. I remember when I started, it's like you're just in that momentum phase. You just want to get something going. And you almost, maybe consciously or unconsciously, will take on anyone. I jokingly say if they can kind of fog a mirror, they're alive, you'll go, great, I'm going to do business with you. And I say, take a couple of steps back and really ask poignant questions. We can dig a little deeper as to what those might be. And I think that, you want to do some psychology for yourself. We're really part-time psychologists. So what are the really poignant questions that you would want to ask someone to make sure that's the right kind of person that you would want to work with? Beyond just, hey, do you have the proof of funds or the money? Can you put the money down on this? Can you buy this thing? Are you who you say you are on paper, but also who is this person? Because the real estate transaction, I sort of describe this, maybe not to the investors because they're a little bit more hardcore, but say if I was working with a first time buyer, I would say this is going to be the fastest in and out relationship that you've ever been in, because we're going to court each other. We're going to start to, look at, decide we want to work together? And then we're going to look at houses, which means, ooh, do we want to move in together? Like, what are we doing here? Are we having a conversation? Are we committed? And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we're actually like doing this thing for a couple of months. We're in escrow. Like we're in it. Like I know your business. I know your mom. I know your dad. I know your kids, right? Like I know everybody's got an opinion about this. You buying this house and then boom, you get the keys. And it's not that you don't hear from me after that because there's aftercare with clients, right? We want to keep up with our clients. But realistically, you're not hearing from me on the day to day anymore. You're not getting those little love checks. You're not getting the updates. You're not hearing from escrow. You're not hearing from your loan officer. You're not hearing from, well, you're not going to hear from the appraisal, but you're not waiting for the appraisal, those type of things, right? And I say that because you want to prep people and you want to know who you're in business with. And said another way, because we're all adults here, who are you in bed with? You want to make
Mm,
sure that you're like a yes to this person. So that is not answering your immediate question, but I want to say that because it is on both sides. If you're going to do retail and you're an agent, part of why people get so beat up in this business is that they just say yes to everything and everybody, and then they don't know what they said yes to. And maybe that's not a match. And it's okay for you to say no for now or no politely, like we're not the match, and allow for even the universe to just bring you something that's a better match. And believe me, I have
mm,
said yes to so many things in my career based on money and being reactive. And every time it has bit me in the butt and I had to take 3 steps back, I was so exhausted. So back
mm,
to all these years later, I haven't said this to you, but I had met this investor at another opportunity that I was showing him for a friend.
mm,
It was another flipper who lives about 45 minutes away. She called me and said, Renee, please, can you show this property? I know it's right around the corner from where you live. I'm 45 minutes away. Can you please do this for me? And I did. And it was raining sideways that day in Los Angeles. It was about a year ago. And I thought, gosh, whoever is the investor that is going to come to look at this property while it is raining cats and dogs, raining sideways, I actually want to kind of get to know who is this person. They're committed. I'm assuming they're committed, right? So I get in the
mm,
car. It's only 5-10 minutes down the way. I get there. There's a hole in the roof of this house. It's raining inside the house. It's gutted. It's all back to the studs. And here comes this guy and his son. And, I got this intuitive hit that just said this little voice that was just, I don't, when you get those hits where you don't quite know what the voice says all the time, but you're like, something ain't right here. And I wasn't in danger. It just was like, something ain't right here. And I noted that. And, meanwhile, we're kind of like in and out of it because it's so crazy with the rain or whatever. But there was that for me, right? That was, I think, in March
mm,
or April of last year. And then I didn't hear from them. I kind of kept up with them. I kind of had them on a drip system. And then fast forward about, I don't know what it was, 6, 8, 7 months. And I got a phone call. Hey, Renee, we are looking at another house and we'd like for you to represent us as a buyer's agent. And I really, they are high end luxury flippers. So my ego got the best of me and was like, oh, this could be, a nice little paycheck and it won't be so
mm,
difficult. And so I was in 2 separate transactions with the same person, and both of them blew up. The one you're referring to, I will speak to. The one you're referring to, I will speak to. But it started to get more and more difficult and more of a pain and not fun. And I went, damn, I didn't listen to that still small voice. I got hooked.
mm,
Okay. But I'm in it now because now I'm in an escrow. I said I do. And now I'm in an escrow, 2 escrows. The escrow that you're referring to is I got it as through another agent. It was like he had a very off market, and I only knew about it. There weren't too many people in town. That is the relationship that I had developed, with this person. So fortunately, I was on the list to be called, and fortunately, I had somebody that was a potential yes. And it just became a nightmare. And they originally I believe, were a buyer. I don't think they out of the gate were going to wholesale, but I was repping them as the buyer. We did put a clause in there, an assignable clause as a get out. So I will say that I put that on all of my investors, unless they're just flat out telling me that they're not going to wholesale it. But they didn't tell me they were
mm,
going to wholesale it. Okay, that's just basic language that I put in there. And we got it under contract for a decent price, but only would have been for an end user or possible flip, but only
mm,
for them. It penciled out for them. And it really was on the higher side. So ultimately, it ended up that it was on the high side. They did not tell me that they were going to wholesale it. And to the rest of the investor community, it was going to be too high. I knew that. And so they just were scrambling and trying to make this work. And a good 2.5 or 3 weeks went by of just arduous communication and ball dropping and white lies and all the things. And because I have the background of working with investors slash wholesaling specifically, things were not matching up. And so
Mm,
I started to think, are these guys wholesaling this? And when I approached them professionally about it, they did say yes, they were. And it was like too little too late at that point. And the sellers were difficult, these buyers were difficult, everything was difficult. So ultimately, unfortunately, we had to cancel the contract. That is par for the course of being in real estate. That's not an interesting story to say the contract got canceled. It's the fact that there was so much time in between. I'm talking about assessment of myself, so much time in between, so much wasted time that I just really said to myself, why did I do that? Why did I not listen to that still small voice that I could have potentially avoided this all along? So the moral of the story is that we're all going to do it. I don't think it's a mistake, but I do think that when you're in a business like real estate that is sort of high stakes and very emotional, regardless if you're working with
mhm,
investors, they're emotional in a different way. Yes, they just look at the data, but they're still attached to a deal. And people have a lot of very interesting relationships to money. Money is a relationship. It's an inanimate object, but it is a relationship that you're having to it. So you're managing yourself as an independent contractor, and you're kind of managing, the expectations, if you will, of your clients. So I would implore the listeners to really take on yourself and whatever that routine looks like, whether you're spiritual, religious, or the otherwise, is to really take that time to figure out yourself and know what works for you, and then allow that to seep out into your business. And then be mature enough or responsible enough that when the still small voice comes and you don't listen to it, that it's kind of an I told you so on yourself. And how many of those are going to add up in your career? So one of these had not shown up in some time. So I think I got sideswiped and I did get caught up
mm,
in excitement of what that payday could look like. It was going to be a $2 million
mm,
payday. So, I mean, not $2 million to me, but the commission on a $2 million purchase is no small feat. And so that would have been quite nice. And it went right out the door. So as fast as it came in, it went out, which I also say,
mm,
we don't get paid until you walk out of the building with a check in your hand. So to those of you who are
yeah.
agents and or newbies listening, do not start spending that money in your head, because it's a real letdown when you do. And it always stings. It always stings. And it's human nature. It's what we do. You get excited. Yeah. So did that kind of help frame, what I would have done differently and any contribution to a newbie?
Oh, super helpful because I think that it's one thing to think about your spiritual health, your emotional health, listening to that still small voice. It's another thing to utilize that in your business. Because when you're showing up to work, in a lot of ways, you're thinking data, you're thinking money, you're thinking about the physical things that are truly in front of you, and taking the slower moments to actually listen to that still small voice that says, yeah, maybe this is a buyer that'll waste your time. Is so important and something that I often am not thinking of either. But the amount of time, if you had taken that pause, if you
Mhm.
had listened, maybe even after the original showing, you would have saved your time and you would have saved like at least two loops in the roller coaster ride.
I would have. I think this came my direction as a reminder again of what not to do. And that's what's important in life.
Hmm.
It's like we get all excited about things that we like to do, and that's fun
Hmm.
and exciting and important. And I had a business coach once that he constantly said, stop being on the excitement plan. Real estate,
Hmm.
you can get on the excitement plan with real estate. And so stop being on the excitement plan. And you know what? I got on the excitement plan. It's okay. It's just a
Hmm.
human nature. Have you ever gotten yourself on the excitement plan, either in wholesale or in retail?
All the time. One big one was me and Paolo. We were working on a larger project that we were talking about a really big payday. And when those paydays get bigger, that the loss of them gets harder, especially if you're on the excitement plan. And that's
Uh-huh.
what we were, because that was one of the first larger fish that we hooked. And I can tell you, I definitely lost smaller checks in the amount of energy and effort that went into that idea of a potential large one. And that's what I want to drop because it's really the consistency of those smaller ones that's more important.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. You're saying that. Sometimes I think in real estate, and I'll say specifically because I live in Los Angeles, although it could be any larger opportunity, like you were saying, because you're not in a big city, but sometimes these big cities get on the excitement plan. I talk about this often where most of the television shows are filmed here about real estate, not just traditional TV, right? But about real estate. And yeah, there's a reality to it. And a lot of those people I've had the pleasure of either doing a deal with or been in the rooms with or whatever. And that's the path they chose. Very much of it is luxury, it's high end luxury. And there's not a lot of room up there. We call it the thin air. There's a reason why there's not a lot of agents that are there. Either they don't have the black
Mhm.
book to hang. Let's be real. You've got to know people that can afford, quite large sums of money. And that's just maybe a different lifestyle
Right.
that you've chosen, that those are people that you're associating with. But it's this illusion of coming in that I'm just going to, sell these grand properties and make all this commission. And realistically, not a lot of those people that are, I think, on TV that I know of, I don't know, their base hits are like, they don't get out of bed if it's, less than $5 million. Some of them, I mean, like they have their age, their assistants or their buyer's rep or whatever, do the 1.5 million or the 2 million. But you know what? They earned it, and that's just what their lane is. So there's no wrong here. But I want to be clear that for the listener, that whether or not you've ever said this to yourself or admitted it or got on the excitement plan because you watched $1 Million Listing or Selling Sunset or even HGTV, that is all
Mm.
what we call camera ready. It's camera ready. It's ready for what you see. You're not seeing all the things behind. And many of those folks that are in that position, when you pull them aside, will tell you they door knocked. They door knocked. Now, albeit
Right.
they door knocked, the high end or whatever, but they hustled. They got out there and door knocked house to house, got doors slammed in their face, get off my property. How'd you get on my property? I've got laser beams everywhere, like how did you step on my property? Because they have all this security, whatever. But I say, if you want to do that, then you make a commitment to yourself and you do everything within your power to be in that lane. Otherwise,
Mm.
do the base hits,
Mhm.
whatever that is for your market. Do the entry level, just over and over again. Do the entry level. Because I rarely also see where if something is a big payday, it's not every week. It's not. So even though you can make a lot of money, I think in your mind, psychologically, you need to admit that. Are you okay with the cadence of one sale a month or one maybe every other month when, oh, by the way, you have
Yeah.
overhead? you know, and
Mhm.
instead of the momentum of X amount per month. For me, an X amount might be like realistically, I don't know, 2 to 4 to 5. I mean, I don't have a big operation, so it's all relative to the
Mhm.
operation. But how many is it for you per month? And personally, goes back to know thyself. I actually know me. I like a momentous case. I don't like doing one every other month, even if it was for $2 million. I don't like the where is it
Mhm.
coming from. That's me. That's my personality. So
Mhm.
I am blessed that when those come along, those are nice to have, but I do base hits, whether it's retail, whether it's wholesale. And so I kind of swim in the, everybody category, and that works for me. So yeah, I mean, how are
Yeah.
you? You said you had that big deal, but how did that work for you and your other partner? Did you just happen upon that, or you were going after the larger sums, or how did that work?
Well, it did kind of fall into our lap when we were after just the base hits. We were going after the single family homes. Funny enough, I no longer directly work with that team or that partnership, and I think that deal was a part of it. One, it delayed the kinds of income that I was getting, but also it became a conversation of, are base hits good enough for this team? Are we okay with having consistent base hits even if they're smaller? And the answer for my partner was no. And for me was yes. And so recognizing that we both worked differently that way, and they kind of have a similar mindset of don't get out of bed unless it's 10K or more. And I get out of bed for all Ks. Like one,
Yeah.
two, three, four, it doesn't matter. I want to collect as many of those as possible. And that was a big part of why I restarted the wholesale operation of my business all the way back in November, was so that I could come from an area of those base hits. And I prefer it. It gives me more consistency. It allows me to help other people and put money in their pockets. And I wouldn't change that. But I can tell you that for myself, something like going after luxury isn't on the table because of niche, because you have to show up as a specific type of person for that niche. I'm not going after that. I wave and I pass referrals to the right people who are. And I think that goes for any niche, for any agent collectively. Like I think of the buying role and being a buying agent, and I can think of some incredible people who like their heart and their ability to be a buying agent is so high, and you can see that they're there specifically to show people how to get to their first home, and you can see the passion for them in that. For some, it is really just a drudgery of gas money into many openings of doors until finally they're in the part that they know well, which might be the contracting part or, making sure that it goes well as a transactional coordinator, those kinds of things. And for myself, I know I'm not out there telling people, hey, I'm a buyer's agent
Yeah.
because I don't want to drive the 3 hours towards the areas where buyers are really active around here. Do I get buyers sometimes? Yeah, for the specific niche I help people buy, which is homesteading in Colorado. So, like, noting the type of personality that you have when you're entering into real estate, I think can help you decide where you start as a niche. And deciding who you're helping to start gets you there so much faster. And most of the time, I'm coaching the wholesaling side of real estate and I'm telling them the same things, but it goes for agents too. Like, pick something, pick your niche to start, whether that's buying agents, selling agents, or starting to march yourself around in heels for those
Yeah.
luxuries. You
Yeah.
got to pick one, you know?
So good what you said. Oh, that's so good. And I want to say this to either a new agent or a new wholesaler for that matter. And those of us who are kind of like the crusty old, agents that have been around a minute that maybe we get tired. You say, oh God, I could do this with my eyes closed. Wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I could do this. And it's like, maybe you want to pivot. Maybe you want to do something else. So what is causing you, the figurative you, what is causing you to not have that joy anymore? Where is that spark gone out? And I've had that conversation with myself. And I'm admittedly openly saying this, it'll be out there now for in internet land, evergreen. But I knew somewhat early on that I tried everything because I encourage folks to do that, right? Kind of try everything. Unless you know your heart is like, I'm going to do this. I say try it all for, I don't know, 6 months, maybe a year. And then decide, okay, I think I like this lane. But I have done plenty, I've worked with plenty of buyers, and I just don't have the patience for it, especially first time buyers. And it's not fair to them. These are people with their hard-earned money. They're excited, they're scared. I was really good with them, but there was something that I just wasn't settled with myself. And I had to have the come to Jesus with myself because I knew that I wasn't having a good time. Could I do it? Could I go through the motions? Could I get a paycheck from it? But I also I'm extremely sensitive. And I kind of felt like people could get that from me. They were never going to say anything like, oh, Renee's, didn't do a good job or any of that. But I felt like internally, they kind of were like, this chick's not really into it. That was like a thought bubble. And I felt that into it.
Mhm.
Like I wasn't really into it and they weren't really into it because I wasn't really into, you know what I mean? Like we were in this weird dance. And so when that happened, a handful of times, I just had a sit down with myself and I was like, I don't really want to work with buyers anymore. I don't really want to work with first time buyers. So I got clear, right? I'm sending out a message to the universe, if you will. I got clear and hardly any first time buyers, I think since then ever came my way. And it was like a universal handshake. It was a conscious uncoupling of whom I would choose to work with. And we were really okay with each other because I'm not doing them a service and they're not doing me one either. So I go back to, know thyself because there's so many beautiful categories, to participate in. And so for me, where I got excited is in the second year that I was in real estate, it was 2007. And the market hit. For those of us who remember 2007, it was like overnight out the back door and the market just went upside down. So I didn't even have the luxury anymore of really saying, do I want to work with first time buyers? It was just investors and real estate owned REOs and short sales and an occasional retail sale. And so I got ushered right into working with investors straight away because I had accounts like that. And I thought, excuse me, I thought, oh, I really like this avatar of person. They're kind of matter of fact. They like to make decisions quickly. They're not really care if there's, Caesar stone or marble countertops. I just didn't have the patience for it. And so I realized that's my lane. So I say this to the audience because it's okay to explore what it is that maybe you don't like, because you don't even know if you don't like it if you don't go do it. So there's that. Give yourself
Right.
that grace. And, the people are not going to be in an upset with you, but just know you don't have to slug your way through this in real estate. There's a position for everybody. And I like that you had said, to your past partner, because that's a breakup, no matter how long you guys were together. I'm sure you're still in communication, I hope, but it's a breakup nonetheless, and you had to reinvent yourself. So perhaps, right, as you go through life in this journey of real estate, that you will know yourself even better because you had those experiences, and you will just say, hey, you know what, this is my lane, or this is my lane for now. Maybe you'll get out
Hmm.
of it. That's what I did. So I've always been working with investors. I've done a lot of retail, just not too much with buyers. So then I became more of a listing agent of regular homes.
Hmm.
And all the while, I was still working with investors. And then when COVID hit, and a lot of people were moving out of California, and it just shifted a lot of things. And I remembered how much I liked working with investors. And that's when I pivoted my career. Because I didn't really want to just be a local area specialist. I wanted to have the flexibility and the mobility of being able to go elsewhere. And there's a big, wide country, there's a big, wide world of real estate. And I wanted to be a part of that. I didn't want to just be an area specialist in my neighborhood. That didn't make sense for me. I don't have kids here. I don't have family really here. So I could just wanted to get up and go. So my
Hmm.
lifestyle was different. And when I saw some of the opportunities through technology that were allowing, that's where I doubled down on the investment. And that's what got me talking more about the wholesaling. That's how you and I met.
Hmm.
So it's been an
Yeah.
interesting unfolding. It's been an unfolding. I didn't even know it was a want that I wanted. You
Hmm.
know, I don't know that I could have done this 18 years ago. The technology wasn't there. I wasn't there. Now we're here, and it's like, whoa, this is an opportunity. Have phone, have computer, have Wi-Fi, and you're plugged in.
Hmm.
I had
Hmm.
a computer back then. I had a cell phone back then, but it wasn't a smartphone. And it was not like, oh, I'm going to do business everywhere all the time. That was only happening with people who were maybe doing syndications. And it was kind of a good old boys club. It wasn't really open for everyone. You sort of had to know,
Mm.
right? It was very much handshakey. I know you, I trust you. We're going to do business together stuff. It wasn't this, let me get on YouTube and like be a investor and a wholesaler tomorrow. Really, it
Yeah.
wasn't. I mean, YouTube barely existed. I'm not that old, but to say the internet is really still a teenager. The internet's
Hmm.
maybe what, 15, 18 years ish, right in there. It's a new phenomenon, really. So, especially
Yeah.
how it is now, maybe it's only about 7 to 10 years old because it kind of took a little bit to ramp. The internet was there, but not how we see it. I mean, I'm pre Zillow, I'm pre YouTube, I'm definitely pre Instagram. Facebook was just kicking off. So it's been an interesting incarnation about how you find your people amidst this. So
Yeah.
it's fun. Yeah.
I take that for granted that I have access to so many of those things, and that's what makes this an easy job for me. Because where I live, I'm not out there on the ground floor as often, but I still have consistent closings. So, like, how do I do that? All online, and I kind of forget that is a new thing in this industry. And I appreciate that reminder. I grew up like I was pretty young when the AOL disc hit Walmart, still remember it, but I was young enough that I was like, yeah, this is a thing where, you know, technology is growing. And yeah, I can see how that affects everything. I want to jump a little bit back to the story
Yeah.
because you said, you weren't expecting these people to wholesale. And I can already feel some of our audience hear the word wholesale and go, like, oh, that was the red flag you missed, is that there were wholesalers in general. But you and I live in a world where it's hunky dory for agents and wholesalers to work together and to partner and to see success together. So, it wasn't that they were wholesaling that was
Mhm.
the red flag exactly. What were the red flags and why did it not work for you in this scenario? What could have changed where it would have been better for you to be able to take care of a wholesaler and actually have this thing close? Not even sure if I'm asking the question
Yeah, I think I
correct.
mean, I know the question you're asking. I'm thinking because this was one of like the top five most challenging transactions. So even though it could have been a challenging transaction, I'm saying there was an elevated challenge to all of this. Um, I think the prospective buyers were also on the excitement plan. This is in a neighborhood in Los Angeles called Sunset
Mm,
Plaza. Most every house, I'm being very general for the audience that knows Sunset Plaza, most every house has a view. Most every house is on the hillside. And it is a very kind of exclusive neighborhood in that it's in the middle of everything. And it always sort of has been. I
mm,
mean, it is a premium micro market neighborhood within Los Angeles. It's right in between what we call Hollywood Hills West, which it is Hollywood Hills West, but like Laurel Canyon, and then Beverly Hills. So it has a lot of kind of cachet and exclusivity. And the views of this property was all the way at the top of Sunset Plaza were just spot on. So when the buyer came in, they got wowed.
mm,
So yeah, that's what you want. I mean, the buyer needs
mm,
to sell themselves on this. It doesn't matter how much, flowery conversation that I may spin on it as an agent, and any of the agents that are listening know this. At the end of the day, the buyer will make the decision for themselves, right? And so I could see it in his eyes. He got wowed with the views, and it was a nice winter day, which is clearer around here when it's winter day. You could see all the way out to the ocean, all the way to Catalina. I mean, it was like sold itself. So I think
mm,
that he got caught up in his own emotion and was one-upping the price because the sellers were very difficult. They were just sticking to what they were sticking to. They weren't going to let it go. And I think that one of my famous last lines is hope is not a strategy. And he was
mm,
hoping that he could make it work because his emotions were very tied into it. And then when it got away from that as him being the buyer to actually do it, because I was the buyer's agent, listening to him like he was going to be the buyer. I don't know, because he's a flipper doesn't mean that he's not going to buy the house and do a buy and hold. A lot of people do the little teeny houses to make their money, and then they take their money and they go buy the big house at the top of the hill, and that's what they live in. I mean, I don't have to
mm,
ask him every question. And he was kind of a tough nut. He wasn't really an emoting or emotional person. He was just the facts, ma'am. That was it with me. So if he was or wasn't going to do that, he wasn't probably going to tell me. So
mm,
where it started to slip is when you're a residential real estate agent, there are timelines and there are specifications according to the contract that need to be honored. And you just do this enough times that a regular buyer or traditional buyer, or I'm going to call it a buy and hold buyer, right? They're going to act upon that. They're going to show up and act upon that. And I don't mean just the EMD, it's talking about the inspection period. And they didn't have enough of inspectors out. They were kind of doing their own thing. And I'm thinking, like, okay, that's a little weird. I mean, even though you might have your own GC, general contractor or whatever, I'm not hearing or seeing a lot of investigation. This was also what's called a ready to issue. So the house had plans and permits that were going to be in place from the city
mm,
for them to actually execute on the project. So we were waiting for the plans and permits to be approved from the city of Los Angeles. So I was kind of in this weird gray area of like, are they going to do their due diligence? But wait, we need to wait for the permits and the plans to come through. So, I was getting this push pull as well. And then when we finally had, access to it, I think they were just scrambling. They realized that how much it was going to cost to actually do this project. And they then were going to try to exit from it. And nobody can predict the future, especially in a flat to slightly down market, and especially in the high end, that they were not going to make the money that they needed to make for the risk that it was going to take. And so, excuse me.
mm,
So I just started to make assumptions that this was going to go south because they were not acting upon what a traditional buyer would act upon. So, so that is experience. I think it's just my own experience that I started to see and know that this was losing traction because they were not doing what they said they were going to do in the time that they were going to do
mm,
it, even though there was a lot of loose ends because we were waiting for those permits to come through. And some of it, guys, that's just where you want to hire a professional because you can't. what do they say? Like hiring a non-professional. If you think hiring a non-professional is expensive, wait till you hire, or when you hire a professional is expensive, wait till you hire a non-professional. And a professional is just somebody also who should have also a lot of experience. It's just experience. I don't know that really answered your question, but I gave you particulars. And then there's just notions. There's things that people are not doing when they should be doing it. And you start questioning yourself, like, are you going to back out of this thing? Because you're not acting the way
Hmm.
a buyer is excitedly acting. It's that. Again, you do it enough
Yeah.
times, see a pattern.
And I think that's like a good reminder that even sometimes when we hear that still small voice, like it doesn't always mean that you walking that path wasn't a good idea, but at some point something kind of shifted. And I think this is a good time for me to sort of turn and talk to my investors and my wholesalers and the people that are approaching agents with these kinds of things. The moment that something is off, the sooner you can communicate that to your agent and be a partner with them on whatever problem that can be is so much better. And maybe that's a flipper going, wait, I can't take on this project. I'm now going to assign it. Or maybe it's really truly a wholesaler going, wait, I can't sell it at this price. I recognize that the roof is actually double the amount of cost because the lot is so small that blah, 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 whatever it is that's found. Instead of keeping that and trying to sort it and figure it all out on your end so that you can come and present a happy little bow to your agent about it, they are going to receive it better the sooner you can tell them, hey, this is messy and I'm trying to solve it for you. And I've seen that in my own experiences where recently I really 100% the offer I put in, I was expecting to get it sold slightly above that. Typical wholesale, incredibly happy. Issue being that it was on such a small lot in such a historic issue area that to get a new roof on, the cost was double because they were afraid that when they pull that roof off that it'll drop on the neighbors. So they want me to cover that concern and it doubled the roof price like that. And the agent the whole time was like, "You don't need a new roof." And I was like, well, we do. It's 15 years old. And to be able to get it insured on the other side, we're going to need to get a new one. I don't care whether it leaks or not. And coming to them with that, and I did probably 2 days after getting it under contract, hey, here's something I've noticed. This could change my numbers, but I'm hoping it doesn't. By the time I had to do a retrade 4 or 5 days later, he understood why. He kind of saw it coming and he was ready to make a decision about it.
Mm,
And we ended up retrading that, getting it sold. It will close on Monday, which is exciting. And
yeah.
he even said thank you to me. He was like, I wasn't expecting the retrade. I didn't want that, but the way that you did that and explained it to me, I really appreciate it. And I'm excited to get this thing closed.
Yeah.
And so as soon as there's a red bell, tell your people so you guys can work on it together. And I feel like if they had told you, hey, we're switching this over to a wholesale, you, a wholesaler as well, can go, well, it's not quite at the right number to wholesale. We would have to talk about a retrade to do that. And you would have saved so much time.
I would have saved time. Them, me. I mean, even if they wanted to give it the college try to wholesale it, the beautiful thing about investors in general, whether you're wholesaling or just investors, is they're pretty much bottom line people. And so even if it went out into the ethers on certain apps to say, hey, we're wholesaling it and this is what we'd like to wholesale it for, I assert, even though this is in the higher end, right? So it might have taken a couple of more days or even a week. Let's just be fair and say 5 days. That if they put it on there and they let it ride and even told me that, hey, we're going to put our fee on top of it, we're going to do the thing. Um, I may have even said, give it 3 days or 5 days or whatever the case, right? But if we gave it 5 days and we couldn't get any response in that amount of time, like nobody was interested, or the interest that was coming back were probably original prices for where it should have been, and that is the market giving you
Mhm.
feedback. So it's partially a hunch, and then it's like a hypothesis. You have an idea and then you put it out there to see if it's going to be that or not. I don't know, right? We're not mind readers. We don't know. I can't predict the future, but you have enough of your own experience and intuition, and then you go, okay, go for it in this time frame. We're not going to let it go. And instead,
Mhm.
they were, again, kind of white line and kicking the can down the road. And it's a very uncomfortable place to be. I'm an incredibly, ethical person. And some of us just have to, give our little white lie issues things down the road. It's part of expectations, I think sometimes, and I don't like doing it, but if I don't have to do it, and I don't like doing it when I feel like there's an extreme gap. And it kind of felt like, I'm not saying anybody did anything to me, but it definitely felt like my back was against the wall and I was having to do this type of communication with the seller's agent, and he's talking to his sellers, and the whole thing's just a mess. And I don't like it. It's not how I operate in my life. And so the whole thing was just uncomfortable. But yeah, it goes back to, who are you going to do
Mm.
business with? So I did kind of blame myself for saying, dang it, Renee, you didn't listen to your intuition, and like, this is why it's happening. But while it was happening, I had grace and I held on, and it just ended up canceling. But like you said, not just time, because that's the great equalizer. We only ever have so many hours in the day, no matter what our experience is. It's also just my emotional state, my mental health, my everything in my body that I was feeling. I mean, I just this isn't an everyday occurrence for me, thank God, because I do have boundaries up. But just when it does, you guys have all been there in positions where you just don't want to be here. It's just yucky. So get ahead of things, like you were saying, Corianne, and don't be afraid to have the uncomfortable conversations. If you want to be in this business, you've got to embrace and learn how to communicate and have the uncomfortable conversations. I'm constantly saying that my relationship to real estate, or my relationship to clients within real estate, it's like your intimate relationship. It's a relationship. And so look around. If your life isn't singing in other areas of your life, then guess what? You're bringing that to this. And until the great, equalizer over here, like wherever you go, there you are. It doesn't matter that it was, this wholesaler or that or this or that. I come back to me. How could I have done this differently? Sometimes there are things within the transaction you just can't control. But once I got wind of it, then I had a conversation with these clients, and then the gap shortened, because by then there was just not
Mm.
enough time left anyway, because we were jerking around for 2 weeks. But I could have maybe saved myself, 2 weeks, by knowing that's what they were doing. So anyway, this is kind of an anomaly situation. But I think for me, it's a reminder to ask the flippers up front, are you truly the end buyer in this? Are you truly going to take on this project and do it? Or is there an ounce of an idea that you might wholesale it? Because not every flipper is a wholesaler. They'll just cancel the
Mm.
contract. They won't even try to wholesale it,
Mhm.
right? They won't try to save it. So all you can do is ask. But setting that standard and that boundary, and maybe even saying, to your client, I'm a stand that we are going to have clear communication in this transaction. I'm unusual, right? I'm not like every other wholesaler. I'm not like every other micro flipper. I'm not like every other agent that you've worked with. Set a precedence, be different, and say that
Mm.
to people, because they might be taken aback, like, whoa, wow, you're not just like this hustler out here trying to make money. You're actually out here creating relationships, which, guess what, is the basis for real estate. It's a relationship based business. So
Mhm.
every now and again, you're going to have one of these anomalies like I had that we've been talking about. But for the most part, my relationship with the people that I do business with is very concise and clear. And there's bumps along the road because there's a weird thing with the roof, or the other agent's upset because no, the roof, there's differences of opinion. But that's par for the
Mhm.
course of what we do. That's I don't even talk about that. That's just what we do in the day. But if you're not out there
Mhm.
setting a precedence for who you are and how you operate in business, then I assert that you're just transactional, and you're maybe not
Mm.
making yourself a differentiator in the business. And after 18 years, I've learned along the way, and I've also done a lot of personal development that has spilled over into my business life. And this is, I believe, part of where my longevity is, not as a brag, but just as a share. As I've gotten better, the business has gotten better. And there's always holes in the ship. There's always places to look, right? There's no top to the mountain of who we are as people. But if you're always looking and
Yeah.
interested and then course correcting, you will be rewarded. And every now and again, you'll get a lesson to say, oh, okay, you said you wanted to listen to your intuition, and did you? And I didn't. And this is my lesson.
Mm.
So, I'm not
Mhm.
blaming them. I mean, I can easily do that. And when I was in the heat of the moment, I was incredibly annoyed. And I had a couple of good friends that I called to that can listen to me just emote, get it off my chest. But realistically, I always say, right, you're pointing your finger out at everyone else and there's three back at you. So pay attention to what this is and you'll be a better person. You'll be a better business person. And most likely you will not attract these scenarios often, especially if you're new, no matter what age you are. It doesn't matter. That's just being a better human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I look up to you, and that's something that I want to bring more to my life and to my business is like true responsibility. No matter how much I think somebody else could have influenced it to the better, I still have to take responsibility for my play in the game and the end result. Because I'm going to be so much happier walking away saying, I could have done this better. Here's what I could have learned from. Than I wish this person and that person and this person had all done it this way. And so, yeah, responsibility and the internal battle is entrepreneurship. And if you're
Yeah.
coming in to being an agent, I don't really care what brokerage you're joining, you are in entrepreneurship. You're running your name, your brand, your presence as something that you want people to return to. And so the more that you can do that internal work, the more you can take on that responsibility for the external reflecting your internal, the more I'm seeing shifts in my business to the positive.
Beautiful. So good, Corianne. And you're in front of it. And that's what I want, if to impart a gift, that's what I would want for anybody listening on this call is be better, do better, have better. It's the be, do, have. And real estate just happens to be your work equity. Don't come in here like it's a
Mhm.
money grab. Can you make good money doing this? Absolutely. Can you do it pretty quickly for effectively very little education, meaning, you're not being a doctor for 10 years and arduous and all that, what they put themselves through. But don't kid yourself. It's not a get out of free jail card. It's definitely, if you want to have longevity in this business and not be transactional, I recommend that you continue to do, self development and look and discover and just allow that to spill out into all the other equities of your life. And you'll be better for it. You'll enjoy the process and people will enjoy the process with you, i.e. clients.
Mhm.
So whether or not they're investors and they're kind of that hard edge type, we're all human beings, we're all just out here just kind of learning as we go. And if you can be the better example of how you want to operate in life, then I think in business, that will reward you because not everyone is going to give you a compliment about who you're being or how you're doing it, but they will sure remember. And you've all heard this, they will remember how they got left because
Mm.
that's what people will remember is how they got left. So regardless of my story about the situation, I do know that those people, because they said it to me, were thanked me actually, which was kind of surprising, thanked me for my diligence and hard work and that I stayed the course and I was really steady throughout it.
Mhm.
So you don't bring your emotions to the table. You leave that at home and you just are a neutral, you represent your client, but you're also neutral, in that mix. And if they ask your opinion, you're welcome to give it or not. But you've got to be the steady one in this. You can't be
Mhm.
reactive in transactions. So how do you even know if you are or aren't reactive? Go ask people or see, see the reflection of how the business is showing up for you. You'll trip over deals and you'll beat your chest and say, look how good I'm doing. But when the doing doesn't get so good, or your
Mm.
life shows up for you on a personal level, you go through something big in your own personal life and you don't have that ability to energetically show up, or the market takes a hard left. That's where the
Mhm.
rubber meets the road. And so wherever you're jumping in real estate, the water is warm. There's enough for everyone. It is a competitive field because people are going after the same thing. They want that house, they want that listing. And that is the
Mm.
nature of this business. And there's plenty for everyone. And as long as you are clear, focused, and aligned about your values and your standards and have boundaries for yourself, then go for it. Go out there. We all have access to basically the same information. The California Association of Realtors or any state that you're listening to, the forms are all the same. Why does anyone do business with anybody? It's because they know, like, and trust them. And the
Mm.
faster, if you will, that you can build that rapport with people and the more relationships that you get to create over time will allow you that funnel of opportunity, right? You're always meeting people and putting them in that funnel of opportunity. And then, you'll do business with people down here and like that. Right. And
Hmm.
sometimes you won't even do business with people that are in your funnel, but they know, like, and trust who you are and how you're operating in life. And they're like, you know what? I really want to do business with that woman, Corey. And there's something about her. I really like her. Or, Renee said something that really resonated with me. I'm going to give her a call. So don't be a secret agent, and don't be, a secret uh, self-actualizer. Just
Mm.
go in and sow within, sow without. And you will really be surprised how much more fluid and almost easier life becomes when you operate from that place. It's much more of a pull than a push. And when you get that for
Yeah.
yourself, you'll enjoy at least this business a lot more. And I've seen my incarnations with myself go through that. And it's been, I can say now in my life, because of a lot of the roads that I've traveled personally, that now the business still has its hardships and its ups and downs. And that's part of the roller coaster and the nature of it. I don't get every
Hmm.
deal. I don't get, clients come, clients go, whatever. But I'm staying steady within it. And so on the day to day, it's much more enjoyable. Yeah, definitely. Do you see that for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think right now I'm in a place where I'm watching. So I'm seeing a lot more of the chaos because I'm taking the time to see it. And what that means for me right now is I'm using my journaling app on my iPhone. And if I'm stuck, I write about it. I just immediately, oh, I had a conversation with my husband. It lasted this long. I left feeling this way. Here's a few things I said I regret. And then I take a few breaths and I get back to work, and I'm putting that somewhere where I can recognize my own habits. And funny enough, doing that is starting to, I'm like, oh, every Saturday morning, I have a tendency to end up with this feeling. Why does that happen? Oh, maybe because I, burnt myself out nonstop 5 days in a row and I never took a walk. And like those kinds of things I'm starting to put together. So I'm not in a place where I feel steady. I'm in a place where I can create more steady by watching and being willing to look at it and being willing to go, oh, yeah, I do that, instead of the defensive reaction of not taking responsibility that it was a scenario outside of myself that caused said reaction. And I can be honest, I am a reactive person. Um, and that works out in my benefit for a lot of things. And it definitely works out to my detriment for a lot of things too. And I'm starting to recognize when and where that is in hopes that I can find that center line in my business. So, but I can see how the work can get me there, and it's worth it.
Guys, I hope you heard that. It's the willingness. It's the willingness. And it's so beautiful that you shared that. So just, stay humble. We've gone off of, real estate conversation, and we'll come back to it in other episodes, but mindset and mindfulness and knowing yourself, that is such the foundation of filling your own cup in this life, that if you don't do that, which it's a beautiful conversation that I believe is more available now, it's always been there,
Mhm.
right? Through gurus or uh, retreats or things like that. But my gosh, with social media, at least you hear about it. Whether or not the person sending it out has the correct deliverability or the intent, the point is that you're hearing more of it. And I've been around now long enough that I was before it and now I'm during it. And it's just refreshing. You're like, oh, wow, this is amazing. People are having this conversation. Like, let's have this. And
Mhm.
so you can pontificate it. You can read all the memes you want. You can listen to podcasts. And if you don't have the willingness to actually do it, it's really like from the neck up. So it's from the heart, in the head, and the body. It's an inclusion of a holistic person. It's not just listening or reading or having conversations regarding certain topics, and then you don't do the application. So the
Mm.
hard work, as they like to call it, it's really more maybe the uncomfortability is the place to look, because that just needs to be revealed and healed. And so once you look, and you now, Corianne, you beautifully stated you're doing journaling and you're having a point of reference if that, calls to anybody else, and do that. And that's the work, right? So you're there and you want to be that better person, and you go, well, I wake up on a Saturday. So how does that affect my business? Well, maybe if I
Mm.
had a showing on Saturday morning, but I woke up and I was in this junky mood for a whole month, maybe I shouldn't do showings on a Saturday morning, because that's how I'm going to show up for that person. Or I do this and now I have more of a command. So now I can, and correct myself, if you will. And then I get to show up for that person. I get to show up for myself, right? And then I get to show up for that person. But how would you know that? And I'm telling you, people feel it. Energy is a real thing. So if I just showed up all sideways and I was with that client, can I just stick the key in the door and open it and words come out of my mouth about how great the space is and the price and all the things? But if you show up and there's a lot of static, people will feel that. And so
Mhm.
leave the static at home, just do that for yourself and other people. And look, you're doing it, if you will, you're doing it, but you're for yourself, for your husband, for the love and care of the relationship that you're having with your husband, for the
Mhm.
relationship that you will be having with your business. So guys, this is not just a real estate conversation. This is a relationship based business because it's a relationship to yourself and a relationship that the world, people, places, and things. So how are you operating
Mhm.
from there? And then you apply what you need to get done to attract transactions and do deals. I'm telling you, the flow will be there. You will be rewarded, so to speak, and you will have a lot more fun doing it. And you'll bounce back when the uncomfortability is there, like I was sharing. So I
Yeah.
just love having these conversations with you. This is brilliant.
Thank you. Me too. I think this is the perfect place to leave people. We ended up on a whole conversation of the still small voice, but business is a reflection of who we are, so it has to be a part of these conversations. Thank you to everybody that joined us today. We hope you take a lot away from this. Please drop us some comments, subscribe, and like. We can't wait to see you again next week and talk to you guys
Love it.
later.
Be well,
Bye.
everyone. Take care.